Welcome to another episode of Dementia Dialogue. Today we begin a new series on young onset dementia. For the next several episodes, we will alternate between our series on the arts and this new series. Later in the spring, we will resume our series on 2S LGBTQ plus issues. We talk of dementia as a condition largely misunderstood by most Canadians. While most people with dementia are older, a significant and growing number of people experience a condition called young onset dementia. In this series, we will talk to family members and people with young onset, as well as a physician scientist. We also will be reminding listeners of some of the other episodes where we have chatted with others who have experienced dementia at an early age. This series is co-hosted by Jillian McConnell and Kathy Hickman of the brainXchange. In this episode, Jillian talks with Matt Dineen about his experience as a spouse to his wife Lisa and as father to their 4 children. You may recall that Lisa Loisel and Faye Forbes interviewed Matt in our series on spirituality. Let's listen in as Jillian and Matt discuss the experience in the Dineen family.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining me today. Can we get started by you telling us a bit about yourself and your family?
Yes, well, thanks very much, Jillian, for having me as your guest. It's our world came, or my world, and those of my 3 children and my wife Lisa came crashing down in January of 2013 when she was diagnosed with behavioral variant FTD, which is a rare form of dementia. And our 3 children at the time were 12, 10, and 8. Up until probably about 2 years prior, Lisa had been showing some signs of just not being herself. And we had a wonderful marriage. Obviously we had our usual issues in any marriage, but very happily married, and things were going great. And then all of a sudden, Lisa lost her job. She started to show signs that she didn't care for her hygiene. Things weren't getting done around the house. And it really precipitated me going to her doctor and saying that these were the things that I had observed. And really, I want to start by saying that Lisa was one of the fortunate ones in that her case was expedited. We didn't have to spend, usually it's on average, about 3.5 years from the onset of behaviors to diagnosis. And we were spared a lot of the harmful effects, like Lisa wasn't put on any wrong meds. She wasn't misdiagnosed. I mean, things for us, Jillian, were really coming to a head in, I think, back in August of 2012. It was just an excruciating time. That's where everything just kind of broke. And I remember we had gone for marriage counseling at her GP's insistence, and we went in, and even after the first session, the marriage counselor said to me, Matt, I don't know what's going on here. I've never seen anything like this before. So in my, everything I had said to them was, things are not, something's going on here. And yet at the same time, Lisa was saying, no, everything is great and great marriage. And so we were fortunate in that, as I mentioned, her GP, there had been an incident involving one of the children and their safety. And I remember that day I called him and said, either you're doing this or I am going to the justice of the peace. Mm-hmm. And he told me, Matt, we have enough evidence and anecdotal stuff that you have given us that you need to bring her in, and there's a process called being formed. And so she was formed, and that day, I believe it was September, I had offered to bring her on my lunch break, and the doctor said, do not bring her then. There will be too many people there, and she may end up having to be taken in a police car. And that's when I thought, this is serious. And he says, please come in after work. And if she's compliant, she can go with you. And that's what happened. That was the day that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. And eventually, there's some details I can provide, but eventually led, a few short months later to her going to the Behavioural Memory Clinic here in Ottawa and receiving on January 10th of 2013 the diagnosis of probable behavioral variant FTD. So just to kind of backtrack, that day that she was formed, we ended up at the Ottawa Civic Hospital, and it was almost a dungeon-like experience going to the basement and the psychiatric unit and having to answer all these questions, each of us going into separate rooms, and then being brought back in and meeting with the head psychiatrist there at the hospital. And I just remember him, he was shaking his head at me. He said, like, this is unbelievable what's going on. Like, here you are. And yet Lisa was saying, you know what, can we leave soon? Matt's got to play hockey later tonight. And it was beyond anything I've ever experienced. And luckily, she then became an outpatient at the Ottawa, through the Ottawa Civic Psychiatric Unit, outpatient unit. They then ran a whole battery of tests on her, including an MRI. And I remember it was early December, and we had an appointment. And that's when the doctor said to me, I need to speak with you. Can you come into this room? And I went into the room, and the doctor had up on a screen 2 brain images. One on the left was that of a normal 43-year-old female, and the other on the right was Lisa's. And it was apparent there was atrophy. And it's at that point that they said to me, we're pretty sure that this is a neurological issue and not a psychiatric one. And so that's what then led us to the Behavioural Memory Clinic, and they expedited the case. And like I said, back on January the 10th of 2013, Dr. Andrew Frank made that diagnosis. And so that day for me, it really was a blessing, because it put a name, it gave, it answered a lot of unanswered questions. So with this type of dementia, it really, whereas Alzheimer's, robs a person of their memory, FTD robs a person of their personality. And so that's what we had been seeing. Some of these crazy behaviors that Lisa had been exhibiting just wasn't who she was. And as her husband, it was so darn frustrating, because I said, for me, it felt like I was ramming my head through a rock, just chipping away, and just trying to survive and protect the kids from some of the things that they were seeing. As young, like Justin was 12, Rebecca was 10, and Peter was 8. And, this is stuff, some of the things that they shouldn't have been seeing. I remember one example, Lisa going out in the middle of an absolute blizzard snowstorm. And she is someone, Jillian, who took care of herself, had picked up running and ended up going into marathons and half marathons. I remember the kids literally hanging off of her leg, begging and pleading her not to go out in the snowstorm. And she just, and you learn afterwards, you can't reason with somebody with dementia, but we didn't know that at the time.
Right.
And I remember her coming back, and she said to me, I almost got hit by one of those major snowplows, because she would plug in, she would bring her iPod at the time. And I just thought, good Lord. And that's what I said the day we finally found out. It was a blessing, because I said at the time, either I'd be getting her out of the back of an ambulance or out of the back of a police car. So at least with the diagnosis and then having to go into long-term care, it meant she was going to be taken care of, and most importantly, that she would be safe.
Can you tell me about whether or what you and Lisa decided, or maybe it was just you, I'm not sure, about telling your kids about the diagnosis?
To the best of my recollection, we came home, and and told the kids what it was. I do remember having a conversation, and Peter again was the youngest, asking me, and I told them, and again, not afraid to, being careful not to divulge too much, that, for example, this is a degenerative terminal disease. I wasn't going to tell them that, but I said, slowly mommy's brain is shrinking. And I'll never forget this. He asked, so does that mean like eventually she'll have to be in a wheelchair? I thought, geez, this kid at 8 is asking me this and he understands. And I said, you know what, Peter? Probably, because mommy's legs will stop working and, but what I recall more vividly, Jillian, was the day I had to tell them that mommy was leaving home. And that was, I actually had them write or draw a symbol of what that meant to them. And it was just, for one of them, it was, that where there was a sunny sky had now turned cloudy and dark, right? And so, trying to make them see that, I had asked them to draw a symbol of mommy as they knew her, and now mommy having to leave home. And I was trying to convey to them through this exercise that, that old mommy will never leave us, right? That sunny, those memories. And, Lisa was that mother who just doted on her kids, like all mothers do, but we had a really great setup. So I'm a teacher, and Lisa worked one day a week as an insurance broker. And then in the summer when I was off, she would fill in for her two bosses at the insurance office. It was a small insurance company. And so that really allowed Lisa to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'm so glad that she did that. And she was very involved, even after diagnosis, with the parent council, and just actively involved. So she was at the school almost every other day, and just always a cheery disposition. And so I see her every day. And Lisa's at a point where she cannot communicate, but I take my finger and it's like I'm writing on her back, and I will say to her, world's best, and she never misses a beat, and she'll fill it in and say, mom. Wow. And then I add, and she forgets this part, and I say, hug her. So world's best mom and hug her, but she'll never not say mom. And it's just like she knows that. It's even when I see her with the kids, it's apparent, that you don't need to have oral communication in order to express your affection for somebody. And that's still, you can see that with her when the kids come in, and she's just, her eyes still light up.
And your kids are a little bit older now, I think around last year of high school and 2 in university, but that's their mom they're visiting in long-term care. That's not the image that most people think of when they think of a resident of long-term care homes.
It certainly isn't. And as I was sharing with you earlier, Peter, I especially think of Peter. One time it dawned on me, this is about two and a half years ago, and I started doing the math, and I'm like, oh my goodness, half his life will always be that, or up to that point, will be with having his mother at home versus then in long-term care. Right. And it was, so he's 17 now. It was when he was 16. I thought, half of his life has been without mom and home. And that's just, we talk about ambiguous loss and the grieving process. And it's on a daily basis. And I can only speak as a 51-year-old husband and father. I can't even imagine what that's like as from a child's perspective.
Can you talk about some of the things that have been the most challenging for you with Lisa being diagnosed at a younger age compared to someone who was diagnosed later on in life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess I start by saying it is just making people like myself, prior to 2013, you say the word dementia, I think of somebody with gray hair who's old, right? Like grandma, grandpa. And now, I guess it's we use this word in education, mindset. And I think I was sharing this with you, that it's not just seniors who reside in long-term care homes. On the road outside of Lisa's home, it has an elderly crossing. And I'm thinking, okay, yes, the majority are, but we are seeing, and hence the reason for your series on Young Onset, you're excluding a group that has been impacted by this dementia. So that's, I guess, in answer to your question, that has been, one of the biggest challenges is educating people, right? Because I can get angry, I can get mad, but then I think, well, a better tool is to take the time to teach people. And we've been doing that for a long time now to, when I had never been a Twitter person, and when I decided to go on Twitter and use it for advocacy, I decided to say to change the face of dementia, right? To say, hey, it's not, as I had thought, older people, but now it can be people as young as, I've read where there's even people in their 20s who have been impacted by this. So that would be one of them, is the system. Another one is just, having the demands of work. Of all three of the kids were highly involved in competitive sports, just trying to figure out schedules, making things run. That first year, I was able to, at least when she was diagnosed in January, I was able to take the rest of the semester off. And I can tell you, there was, I think, one day where I stayed in bed and just napped and didn't do any kind of work related. But the paperwork, having to, figure out finance, is one of the symptomatic signs of FTD, is spending money that the other partner doesn't know about. And that had happened in our situation. So there was a mess to clean up and get the financial house in order. So fighting the system, trying to find, I remember I contacted a lawyer, and the lawyer said, well, Matt, your best bet is to divorce Lisa for your own financial benefit. I'm like, pardon me? And so it was just, and this was early on, I thought, geez, and just all these obstacles. There were many, many obstacles, but I want to also say, Jillian, that I was blessed with some real angels. And I think back that somebody who helped me worked in, at the time in my area, our MP was Pierre Polyev, and his assistant in that office just took such a passionate stance with myself and the family, and just walked us through all the paperwork, through the disability, the CPP, all of that, answered my questions. And it was I don't know what I would have done without her. And just the good fortune of having people who cared along the way to help. So, I think going back to the sports, and parents who offered to drive, grandparents, other family members, it all gets done. But looking back, I often think, how did I manage to come through that? And luckily, the answer is a lot of great support in place. It reminds me that the meeting that I had with the kids when I had to tell them about their mother having to leave home, I said to them, this is horrible. This shouldn't happen. It's not what's supposed to be. But I said, you know what, you guys, there are people who are worse off than us. And I said, we are going to take, a lemon, which is sour, and we're going to turn it into lemonade. I actually said that to them, corny dad thing to say, but it really was. And I think, my faith plays a big part, but it really is, you can have your pity party, but realize that there are people that are worse off. And I think, again, in my life, I've been blessed to know Roger Nielsen. Roger Nielsen, we have a pediatric palliative home here called Rogers House, and it's named after Roger Nielsen. And I think one of the things I was able to do when the kids were even younger, this was before Lisa was diagnosed, was we got to walk through that pediatric palliative care center and see children. They got to see children who were not coming out of there, most of whom did not, ended up passing. And I think, being able to go back and say to the kids, yes, this is devastating what's happened, but we're going to do our best and get through this together as a unit. So other people who are instrumental to me in my journey and continue to be there are the wonderful people at the Association for Fronto-temporal Degeneration down in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. They've been my lifeline. I think of the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County. I've had a care coach by the name of Neil Rosan, who I call now a near and dear friend who has been there for me every step of the way, and I can call. And as a matter of fact, we just made plans to meet up in a couple of weeks. And I can share with him anything that I'm going through. And the best thing is his ability to listen. And having that has been just a tremendous value. I think of the people early on at Baycrest out of Toronto that we did a pilot group, and some of the people I got to talk with and hear their stories, their sources of strength. Because you think, Jillian, that you're an island. I remember even trying to find other people in the Ottawa area who were my age, who had a similar situation. They ran, the bvFTD ran postal code checks for their support groups to try and find and put me in contact. And there really wasn't anyone, and that's changed. But I think too, of other things that I did was I really delved into the research. I continued to do that. I think too, I want to just tip my hat to Dr. Andrew Frank here in Ottawa at Memory at Bruyere, who continues to answer any and all questions that I've had and is just always there when I need to speak to him, as well as Doctors Pedro Rosanetta out of McGill Center for Studies in Aging, and Dr. Serge Gauthier, who very well respected Order of Canada, and I believe is just retired. But you could reach out to these doctors and ask them a question, and they would be able to answer. And not just that, but they also championed me for my advocacy work, and that really fueled me, because maybe it's my Irish heritage, but I really been fortunate to have been able to bring this issue to a wide audience across North America, and never would have imagined in my wildest dreams that I'd be up on a center stage speaking to scientists and delegates in Vancouver. I think back at an international conference and just sharing our experience and what it's like, and also getting to meet people who have gone through this. There's all kinds of people. And so having that support has been tremendous. I've got an amazing group of friends who are near and dear and who are always checking in. And I don't know what I'd do without them. I can tell you that there was a time where I told people, and very bluntly, as a matter of fact, and again, the Irish blood, either you're on my train or you're not. And if you're not, don't get in my way. And some people perceive me as maybe a bully, but I've learned, and it did take some professional help for about 2 years that I had to learn to come to terms with why people I had assumed should be there helping weren't, and that included family. And that's where at one point, and through working with a psychologist, I came to the point, I just want to surround myself. I've got a great network of friends, and they build me up. They don't tear me down. They're positive. I want to surround myself. And that was, for me, one of the best things I ever did. Was it painful to cut ties with several people? It was. But at the end of the day, Jillian, nobody but myself and my children knew the full extent of what was happening inside the walls of our home. And the sad thing is, people feel we live in a society where, people feel that they can comment on maybe some of the things that they've seen, or, Matt's locking up his wife in a long-term care facility, and you've got to wear that. And I'm at a point now where I am a moderator with a men's support group through the AFTD. And we talk about this, all the layers that lie below the surface that people have no clue about. But so it's really helped me with my own mental health, my own progress, to surround myself with people who build you up. And I know the kids as well, that they've got a really great group of friends who are there. They've got caring adults in their lives, and they know that there's always access to professional help if they want to take advantage of that.
Right. So now here we are, almost 9 years since Lisa's diagnosis. What is life like for you now?
Well, at one point when, January 10th of 2013, it was a darkened tunnel. Even though I had gotten the answer to what was going on, where once there was absolute and total darkness, and there was no being able to see ahead into the future. It was just grind it out, get through, pull the kids through, pull myself through. Now there's actually quite a bit of light. And as you mentioned, the kids are the two oldest. Justin's in his 4th year at Laurentian, and Rebecca's thriving in her 2nd at Trent University, and Peter's in his last year of high school. And they've all done so well in all areas. And I call them my superstars. And, they probably don't know this, but they have been a source of inspiration for me, watching them succeed on and off the field. And it's what gives me strength to go about. So all that to say, I'm enjoying and taking up some hobbies of my own. I'm actually joking with friends, those who know me, I actually have some more time on my hands that I've never had before. So taking up some hobbies like birding, nature walking, time to catch up over usually beer and chicken wings with some friends and catch a hockey game that I'm not out running somebody here, there, everywhere. I always joked I was going to master cloning myself 3 times, and that way there would be no conflicts in the calendar. So, but yes, and I think too, for me, being able to help others who are going through, just about a month and a half ago, I had somebody here in Ottawa reach out to me and want to talk. And honest to goodness, Jillian, his story was almost identical to mine. And children even younger than ours were at the time. And just being able to, pay it forward, I guess, is the best way, because, people did that for me. I think of a lady by the name of Linda Radlin. She resides in Nevada and is kind of the guru in caregiving to people whose loved one has FTD, and just was fortunate to meet her in Vancouver, went out for lunch, and she took me under her wing. And, just good people that you can listen, as Neil Rosen does for me, that I can listen to others and maybe, just maybe, say I've been through this and I've tried this, and not tell them what to do, but just know, hey, you're not alone. That's really what it comes down to. You're not alone. And again, this series on being devoted to early onset is wonderful, because we are seeing the numbers are going to go up. The medical community is not very well versed when it comes to FTD. And I hope, for people's sake, that when they start seeing these behaviors, as I saw Lisa going, I'm like, who is this person I agreed to spend the rest of my life with? These things, like, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. That maybe, just maybe, there'll be awareness that, marriage counselors will be able to say, oh, wait a second, maybe these symptoms, maybe it is FTD, or that our young doctors in medical school are receiving training on to recognize the signs and symptoms of early onset, and thereby people don't get administered the wrong medication that messes them up. And maybe some marriages don't end in divorce, right? That people are spared some of the things that other people with FTD have gone through.
What would you want others to know that we haven't chatted about already today when it comes to young onset or early onset dementia and the impact it can have on families?
Well, I think the biggest one, Jillian, is that they're not any less of a person because of this diagnosis. And I've heard that sadly, oh, that person is gone. And I know sometimes we can look at semantics, and I understand what they're saying by that, but we can't forget that even though they're cognitively not the same, as they were, I think of Lisa, she can't speak, she cannot tell me I love you, or this is what happened today. It doesn't make her any less of a person. And I think, for people who are experiencing this or going through, it's okay to hold on to those memories and cherish them, because when all is said and done, you want to be left with the happy memories, and not just the person who had FTD. So that would be one.
Well, I know that we could continue on for quite a while, but I think we'll have to leave it here. I just want to thank you for sharing your and your family's story with all of us today. And thank you so much for your vulnerability, for being so open and honest about your experiences and your perspectives. I think you've helped a lot of people. I don't have any doubt about that.
Well, thank you very much, Jillian. It was a pleasure. And again, thank you to all those involved with the Dementia Dialogues for shedding light on what is only going to become a more and more apparent. We're going to see that in this country.
Thank you, Matt and Jillian, for this conversation. The impact of dementia on a young family is only now being understood. As Matt said, this situation was so new to many of the clinicians his family has met along the way. Matt's willingness to share is matched by his children, and we are privileged to have them join Jillian in a conversation that we will share in our next episode in the Young Onset series. Peer groups are forming in many different communities across Canada to support folks with young onset dementia and their families. You can find out more information about them by contacting your local Alzheimer's Society. Last fall, we held 2 successful focus groups to hear from people about how we can improve dementia dialogue. We are going to hold another 2 focus groups in early March. If you would like to sign up, please send us a note at dementia.dialogue@lakeheadu.ca. We want to show our appreciation to participants by offering a $25 gift card for your time. We are welcoming March with the first episode in our Francophone series. We are very excited to bring this to our Francophone listeners, and if you know of any Francophones who may enjoy listening to a balado, please let them know that one is coming their way. In our next episode, we return to our arts program with an interview with Cynthia Huling-Hummel, who co-hosted an earlier episode on the arts, and Daniel Potts, a physician, poet, and advocate. Please join us on March 8th for that conversation. Thanks to the Center for Education and Research on Aging and Health at Lakehead University, our institutional partner, and to the Public Health Agency of Canada for its financial support. If you would like to have your episode delivered to your inbox instead of searching it out on the web, please contact us at dementia.dialogue@lakeheadu.ca, and we will arrange to send an episode to you when it is released so that it will arrive in your inbox just in time. We also think that this service might be of interest to others that may have difficulty accessing a podcast on the website. So perhaps you could pass this information along or help a person subscribe through dementia.dialogue@lakeheadu.ca. Thanks very much for listening. My name is David Harvey.